Hello, in this video we're going to go over a command line application I built that will generate Google Sheets spreadsheets that give us a better look at accurate player evaluations for your ESPN Fantasy NBA League. The question we're trying to answer here is, how do we create accurate valuations of our players in order to compare them fairly? The problem with the stats that we have available on ESPN is, one, that raw stats don't compare very well, and that their player rating they use is not predictive because it uses past production and not per game stats. So this is what you get from ESPN. I can see at first glance Tyrese scores a lot more points. Seems like he's probably a better player. He's drafted much higher than Brook Lopez. But then if we look at our player rating for the entire season, Brook Lopez is almost double Tyrese Maxey's rating. The problem with these stats is that my brain doesn't know how to properly evaluate the raw stats, and the trending stats just over index on players who played a lot of games. Brook Lopez is not twice as good as Tyrese Maxey, so there's got to be a better way to evaluate players. We can calculate how much value an average player generates, and then we can compare Tyrese and Brook to the average and see how much value they're generating relative to a replacement player. So what I've done here is calculated the average stats for each rostered player in my 12-team fantasy league. With this new metric, we can see that Brook Lopez's blocks are by far the largest outlier. And while Tyrese Maxey does seem to score a lot of points, that's only about 45% above average, whereas Brook Lopez has almost 3 to 4 times an average amount of blocks. If we convert this raw data into a chart, we can see that Tyrese Maxey's raw stats show him a lot above average, where Brook Lopez looks to be below average. Once we convert them to ratios, we can see both players are slightly above average, but this massive block differential actually gives Brook Lopez about a 10% advantage over Tyrese Maxey. So the tool here that generates spreadsheets is going to rate players based on these ratios. They've been scaled up so an average player will have 100s across the board. This will also give us an overall rating. You are allowed to select categories which you are punting, and they will not be counted in the rating. Here, with no categories punted, we can see that Brook Lopez's rating over the entire season is about 10% better than Tyrese Maxey. We can also see the ratings for each time frame. So the 112 and 121 from below are underneath season, and then in the last 30 days, last 15 days, and last 7 days, if we compare these to the PR player rating, we can see they are similar. The difference here is that Tyrese Maxey missed a lot of games, which my per game stats aren't going to dock him for, whereas this player rating will. ESPN's player rating is derived from total production, so while it will give you a good sense of who the best players over the past 7 days or past 15 days, it is not a good indicator of who is going to be the best player moving forward. The per game rating shows you the average production this player is generating for each game they play. So as long as they're healthy, this is going to give you a much better predictor of future value. If you go to the GitHub repository, I will have some setup steps right here. This requires Python at least version 3.8. So what we want to do is just Google Python. You'll want to go to python.org and download and install the version for your operating system. Once you have Python at least version 3.8 installed, you'll want to come down here and run both of these steps. You'll want to open up Terminal or whatever your command line prompt is. And then I will first click this button here, copy paste this. So what this is going to do is pip install all of these dependencies in order to run. I already have them installed for you. It'll take a minute just to install them. And then we will also need to do the Google GSpread setup, which will allow the bot to push the data into your specified Google Sheet. So you can click this link right here, and then we will want to open up this developer. So the 2 steps we will be doing are the enable API access for the project and then using a service account. We'll want to open up this developer console right here. And then you'll want to make a new project. I already have a couple projects here. I'll just make a new one called test for this. It doesn't really matter what it's called. You'll create that. make this new project, you'll want to select it. I am now in my project. I will search Google Drive, API, click Enable, Google Sheets, enable this as well. Now we want to set up a service account. Once we're back on this APIs and services page, click Credentials. So we'll click Service Accounts right here, create a new service account. The name doesn't super matter for this. You can name this whatever you want. We'll just hit Create and Continue. We can hit Done. So we want to come over here and Manage Keys. Manage Keys. We'll click Manage Keys. We'll add a key. We'll create a new key. We want to download it in JSON. Click Create, and then that will download it for us here. We can open up this file, but this is the email right here. So I will create a new Google Sheet. Click Share. Name your sheet. And then we will just copy paste this email right here. Make sure they have editor. And then we can confirm that. Now we want to make sure that we move this downloaded file to this location. So we're going to go to our home directory. If you hit Command Shift period, it will show us our hidden files here. So we're going to want to put that in .config. If you've installed GSpread, there should be a GSpread folder. Make one if there is not. And then we'll drop our JSON file in here and rename this to service_account.json. Once we have all of these steps set up, we'll just want to clone our utility. So I'm going to move into my desktop. You can do this wherever you want to copy it. You'll just copy, paste, run. It will now copy this into our directory, so I can move into it. Hit Tab to autocomplete. When we're in this directory, we can python3 main.py. You can see it generated the settings text file here, where we can edit our league ID and season ID through here. We can also come to settings and set our league ID from the command line. If we in the repository, if we come over to the wiki, we can see there's a little more instructions about where to fetch your league ID from. So let's go over to our fantasy league, copy paste your league ID into here. You can also adjust these settings from the command line. It's a little bit easier just to do it in the file. And then we'll want to copy our sheet name, so fantasy season 25, right into where it says Google Sheet. The categories, roster positions will all be default. If your league uses custom settings, you can adjust these as well. So now we'll run it again, and if we have our league ID in there, we can hit load refresh. A private league, you'll need to also get your SWID and ESPN S2 values. Now we should be able to first initialize our Google Sheet. This one should take a few seconds. And we can now see it has created all of these worksheets over here. So you can just delete the default one if you don't need that. And you can see they're formatted. So now what we'll do is come to the Google Sheets menu, push our Google Sheets. We can see our data just popped up here in our spreadsheet. We have our total tab. This shows total production over the whole season. The per game will give slightly different numbers because it doesn't dog players for having missed games. And then we also have similar things for free agents. We have it broken out by categories, whatever categories you specify in your settings sheet. And then we also have these remaining value sections, which are quite interesting. They're going to score players higher who play extra games for you. For example, this team has a lot of nuggets already on their team. So if they were to add another nugget, they would only get an 11 extra games out of them over playing with their default players. Whereas if they were to add someone from Houston or Brooklyn, it looks like they will get a lot more value out of these players because they get to play 31 games for them over 11 games. So that's 20 extra games where they're getting value from the player. So their per game value is going to be quite a bit higher. You can do the similar thing with free agents, and this is just a Google Sheet spreadsheet, so if you're comfortable with these, you want to convert them to table. Now you can start filtering by certain values, only look at players from certain teams. You can also do that on the category table, so if you want to convert to tables, now we can filter column by better than average. At field goal percentage, we can also filter by positions. Say you only want to look at people who can play point guard. And you can combine multiple filters as well as pulling data out into separate sheets. Because the utility identifies sheets by their names, you can make custom sheets that pull data from the automatically populated ones, and every time new games are played, you can come back to your utility here, you can refresh the league, and then push, and then it will have updated data from the newest day. There's also this matchup spreadsheet that will go through for each day, figure out who is playing on your team, put the best players together on the roster, and then it calculates which team is generating more value each day and can give you a look at which matchups you're winning, which matchups you need a little bit extra help with. Thanks for checking this out, and this is of course all open source, so the code is free to use. You can take a look at how these algorithms are generated. If you come across any bugs, come to the issues tab here. You can make new issues, or you can also request some new features be added. Thanks for checking this out, and comment if you have any questions.